Introduction. Catholic marriage counselors, marriage educators, and facilitators must have at least a basic knowledge of the law of the Catholic Church on marriage. The objective of this two-day workshop on canon law on marriage is to equip marriage instructors and others who facilitate marriage with the knowledge of the laws of the church on marriage. In today's workshop, we shall focus on two canons, Canon 1055 and Canon 1057. Canon 1057 establishes the essential elements of marriage, while Canon 1055 establishes the essential elements of marriage, while Canon 1057 establishes the consents of marriage. The consents. So I think that's again, Canon 1055, establishes the essential elements of marriage, while Canon 1057 establishes the elements. That's the difference. Establishes the consent of marriage. Now we shall now take the canons one after the other. The essential elements of marriage. The matrimonial covenants by which a man and a woman establish between themselves a partnership of the whole life, and which is ordered by its nature to the good of the spouses and the procreation and education of offspring, has been raised by Christ the Lord to the dignity of a sacrament between the baptized. We find that in Canon 1055, paragraph 1. This shall be our major focus. This canon shall be our major focus. The above canonical description of marriage identifies important elements of marriage. For any union to be called marriage, it must have the following elements. 1, material elements. And that material element is points to man and woman. So the material element of marriage is a man and a woman. Number 2 is consent. Number 3, partnership of whole life. The 4th element, good of the spouses, procreation, and education of the children. We shall not take this one by one. The second one, which is consent, shall be discussed towards the end of the presentation. I will discuss it as a separate theme because it is very, very important. Okay? We now take the first one. Material elements of marriage, a man and a woman. The term matrimonial, of course, you know that in the church we speak of the sacrament of matrimony. We hear more of sacrament of matrimony. That name, matrimony, is from Latin, matrimonium. So the term matrimonium comes from two Latin words, matris and mono. Matris means mother. That is the genitive form of the Latin noun mater. Matris, which means of the mother. Possessive form. In Latin, we call it genitive form. that is possession, while mono means office. So matris monum, matrimonium literally means office of the mother, office of the mother. It will interest you. It will interest you to know that a woman has an important role in marriage. And that is why the term matrimony, speaks more of the office of a mother than the office of the father. Is that not interesting? It is. So this term matrimonium indicates the role of a woman in the generation and education of children. Marriage is a legitimate union between a natural man and a natural woman. It is important. The term natural, I use it deliberately. So marriage is a legitimate union between a natural man and a natural woman. The term natural is used here to refer to a man or a woman who is born as a man or as a woman. It distinguishes such a man from a transgendered man or a transgendered woman. Thus, a man or woman who change his or her gender cannot contract a valid marriage. In the society today, you see that there are people who change their gender through surgery. When I visited Vienna in Austria, I heard a story of the son of a permanent deacon. You know that permanent deacon in the church can marry those who decide to be. They will not be priests, but they remain deacon. They can marry. So the son of this permanent deacon changed his gender and became a woman. The father was angry, but what will the father do? The child has the right to do that according to the law of the state. The father couldn't oppose that. It was like a thing of shame to him that you being a permanent deacon in the church, your son now changed. And after changing the gender, the young boy was still active in the church. You cannot discriminate. I mean, that is the situation where we are. Now, such a person who changed, this little boy now, who changed his gender from that of a man to a woman, tomorrow comes to the church and brings a man that he wants to marry this man. That marriage is not a valid marriage. So marriage is between a natural man and a natural woman. So that young man is not a woman, rather he is a man, even though he has changed his gender or whatever. Uh, in the next slides, you will see the response of the church in such a case. In 1995, the Dicastery for the Doctrine of Faith, in its response to the question posed by the German bishops concerning the capability of a man who changed his gender through surgery and became a woman, affirmed that it is not possible to admit such a man to the sacramental celebration of marriage because he only changed the phenotype, that is the physical appearance, and therefore cannot contract marriage with a man who biologically belongs to his own gender. You see that? So the story I just narrated, the young man I met, I mean, the story I heard in Austria, the son of the permanent deacon who changed his gender and became uh, a woman. I mean, let's just say he became a woman by changing his gender. You and I know that you cannot change your gender and become another person, speaking as Christian, as and biologically speaking. Okay. Now, such a person comes to marry. The response of the dicastery in 1995 is that that young man cannot marry validly in the church because the only thing he changed is only the phenotype, the physical appearance. What makes him a man is still there. So what makes someone a man is not the physical appearance, the thing you see. So it goes beyond what you see. It goes beyond the physique. Okay? So biologically speaking, he remains a man. And if he goes to marry another man, that becomes gay marriage as far as the church is important. So the response of the dicastery, also is also relevant to gay union. Gay union does not pass as marriage. Marriage is between a man and a woman, and not between a man and a man, or between a woman and a woman. It is not also between a man and many women, or between a woman and many men. Someone once said that marriage is not between Adam and Steve. And that's correct, not between Adam and Steve. Of course, we all know that already. I'm just reminding you what you already know. I'm not saying something new anyway. Genesis chapter 2, verse 24 says, "For this reason, a man leaves his father and mother and becomes attached to his wife, and they become one flesh." Since marriage is all that to both the good of the spouses and generation and education of children, any union that is not open to this twofold purpose of marriage is not a valid marriage. Here we have the picture of, gay marriage, gay union, preferably because it's not a marriage. Now, these two people claiming to marry, we know that this is not a marriage and can never pass as a marriage. The second element, partnership of whole life. Marriage is for a whole life. It is not a temporary affair. Once there is a valid marriage, there is no human agency that can dissolve it. Spouses are married for life in good times and in bad times. They are always one. They can't be tired of each other. Jesus says that what God has joined together, let no man divide. Matthew chapter 19, verse 6. A few months ago, a popular Nigerian actor, Yul Edochie, made a statement that went viral on social media. He says that if your marriage is not working, walk away and marry someone else. If the new marriage still doesn't work, walk away. You can marry up to 50 times. I believe that some of you read this. It went viral on social media. So when I saw this on social media, I responded to this teaching, this wrong belief on marriage, bad impression of marriage, a wrong understanding of marriage. That's what I see in this statement. And I responded as follows. I wrote and debunked his statement. I explained as follows. I began with the canon that we are discussing now, canon 1055, as I have done it at the beginning of this presentation. I don't need to repeat that canon again. Now, having explained what canon 1055 says, I now continued. In marriage, husband and wife establish between themselves a partnership of a whole life, consortium tosus vitae. This means that marriage, by its nature, requires permanence. If you are not ready to establish this partnership of a whole life, do not enter into marriage. When you enter into marriage with an intention of walking away, you contract an invalid marriage. It means that you exclude one of the essential properties of marriage, and that property is indissolubility. Indissolubility. Canon 1101, I continued in my response to that statement. Canon 1101, paragraph 2 explains this better. Sorry. It stipulates, if, however, either or both of the parties should, by a positive act of will, exclude marriage itself or any essential element of marriage or any essential property, such party contracts invalidly. Every marriage, whether Christian or natural marriage, has two essential properties, namely unity and indissolubility. Canon 1056. To say that marriage is indissoluble means that it is a perpetual relationship which not only should be terminated, but cannot be terminated, even if the couple's existential relationship is irretrievably broken. Thus, walking into a marriage and walking out of it as you wish goes contrary to the essential properties of marriage, indissolubility. Ends of marriage. This ends of marriage is now the third element. Our discussion this evening, we started with Canon 1055, which gives us the elements of marriage. We have discussed the first one. The first one is the matter, that is man and woman. Second one is consortium tosus vitae, that is partnership of the whole life. And the third one is what we are going to discuss now. That is the ends of marriage, procreation and education of the children and good of the spouses. The two ends of marriage, according to the present law of the church, Canon 1055, paragraph 1, are procreation and education of the children and the good of the spouses. Please note that procreation and education of the children are considered as one. They are not separated. So in the law of the church, in the present law of the church, there are two ends of marriage. One is procreation and education of the children, and the second one is the goods of the spouses. The 1917 Code of Canon Law, in its Canon 1013, classified these ends into two: the primary ends, which is the procreation and education of the children, and the secondary ends, which is mutual help and remedy of concupiscence. That's what we have in the old law of the church. That is 1917 Code of Canon Law. I hope you know that presently the discipline of the church is regulated by 1983 Code of Canon Law. So 1917 Code is abrogated, meaning that it is not binding on the members of the church. So in the old law, we have the primary end of marriage and the secondary end of marriage. There is no longer the distinction between the primary and secondary ends in the 1983 Code of Canon Law. The good of the spouses and the procreation and education of the children are expressed one in continuation of the other. There is no separation. In the law of the church, None is considered as the primary end, and the other one is considered as the secondary end. Rather, they are mutually connected. Procreation and education of the children and the good of spouses are mutually connected. They go together. This has its origin in the teaching of the Second Vatican Council as expressed in the document Gaudium et Spes. I believe that you marriage instructors, in the course of your marriage teaching in parishes, you have read this document, Gaudium et Spes, and you have explained it to the couples. I believe so. If you have not, you need to read Gaudium et Spes. You can begin from paragraph 38 to paragraph 50, 51. Okay. So I'm going to discuss paragraph 48, 49, and 50 in brief. By their very nature, the institution of matrimony, I'm reading the document now. This is part of the document that is relevant to our discussion. The document says, that's paragraph 48, that by their very nature, the institution of matrimony itself and conjugal love are ordained for the procreation and education of children and finds in them their ultimate crown. Thus, a man and a woman who by their compact of conjugal love are no longer two, but one flesh, render mutual help and service to each other through an intimate union of their persons and of their actions. Through this union, they experience the meaning of their oneness and attend to it with growing perfection day by day. As a mutual help of two persons, this intimate union and the good of the children impose total fidelity on the spouses and argue for an unbreakable oneness between them. Gaudium et Spes, paragraph 48. Paragraph 50 says that this part of paragraph 50, marriage and conjugal love are by their nature ordained towards the begetting and, and educating of children. Children are really the supreme gifts of marriage and contribute very substantially to the welfare of their parents. Paragraph 50. Gaudium et Spes is the first document of the church that exalts married love. It says of love, this love, that is married love, is an eminently human one, since it is directed from one person to another through an affection of the will. It involves the good of the whole person and therefore can reach the expressions of body and mind with a unique dignity. Enabling these expressions are special ingredients and signs of the friendship distinctive of marriage. This love, that is conjugal love or married love, God has judged worthy of special gifts, healing, perfecting, and exalting gift of grace and of charity. Such love, merging the human with the divine, leads the spouses to a free and mutual gift of themselves. A gift provided itself by gentle affection and by deeds. Such love pervades the whole of their lives. Therefore, it far excels mere erotic inclination, which selfishly pursued soon enough fades wretchedly away. Now, in this document, we have for the first time uh, the document of the church that praises married love. you know, describes you that it's even perfect. It brings about healing, that God has enabled it, that this love, when it meets with the love of Christ, divine love, it becomes, something that can make husband and wife better, perfect. They render mutual help to each other. So the teaching, that is the teaching of Gaudium et Spes, the teaching of Second Vatican Council, inspires Canon 1055, the canon we are discussing this evening. So the inspiration or the foundation of this canon 1055 is this Gaudium et Spes that you read. Uh, Note that the canon law we have, 1983 Code of Canon Law, is actually the teaching of Second Vatican Council put in a juridical language. Put in a juridical language. The teachings of Second Vatican Council, the church now put it a in a language that will become law. That's why many of the things we have in the canon law, 1983 canon law, have their foundation on the teaching of Second Vatican Council. To understand what the law of the church says, you need to understand the teaching of Second Vatican Council. From the teaching of Gaudium et Spes, we see that marriage is not only for the good of the children, but also for the good of the spouses. Thus, the good of the spouses is considered as an integral aspect of the end of marriage. This good of the spouses, which consists of love and mutual perfection of spouses, is ordered to procreation and education of the children. Every marriage must be open to procreation and education of the children. This will bring us to, of course, I'm not going into that, but just for you to know, in your marriage classes, always let the married couples, always let those who are intending to be couples to know what the church teaches on contraceptives. It is sad that many married couples today don't know the stand of the church on contraceptives. It is sad. It is sad. In one of the conferences in Catholic Marriage Forum, I took time to explain that humane vitae. Many married couples today still use condoms in their married life. I met, I had a discussion with a married woman who told me that she never knew that the church is against the use of condoms. Oh my God. It was sad hearing that. It was sad hearing that. And you people, I believe that you have encountered married couples, attending couples who will tell you that they don't know about that. Please, dear marriage facilitators, counselors, instructors, it is good for you to know the stand of the church and you teach it to the people you are instructing. It is important. Please note this that every every marriage must be open to procreation. Must be open to procreation. The objection that people give is that the economy is hard. If you say every marriage must be open to procreation, who and who will help us to train our children? That's why we have natural family planning. Of course, you can regulate births using natural family planning. Many people say no, it is difficult and all that. Recently, we organized a workshop on natural family planning to help married couples know how to use it effectively. Just to let you know that another workshop will be coming next year on March on natural family planning. I encourage you to be part of that workshop, which will come up on March. Okay. So, friends, note this that every marital sex for marriage itself must be opened to procreation of life. Thus, if there is antecedents and perpetual impotence on the part of any of the spouses, there cannot be a valid marriage. What does this mean? I will discuss more on this when I be talking about impediments of marriage. That will be next week, the workshop of next week. That workshop is not a paid workshop. It's a workshop for married couples for everyone. It's not a paid workshop. It's a free workshop. Not a workshop anyway, a marriage webinar. In that webinar, this will be one of the impediments that I will discuss. So it is saying that anyone who enters marriage, okay, and the person has the problem of antecedent and perpetual impotence, that is, antecedent means before marriage, before ratification of marriage, okay, before the exchange of consent, the person has problem of impotence, and that problem is perpetual, meaning that it cannot be cured medically. Such a person contracts invalid marriage. Impotence can be on the part of the man, it can be on the part of the woman. When we say a man is impotent, canonically speaking, three things are involved. It means that the man cannot achieve erection. It means that the man cannot achieve penetration. And it means that the man cannot achieve ejaculation. These are the three canonical elements that constitutes impotence on the part of a man. A woman can also be impotent. The elements that constitute impotence on the part of a woman is that the woman, cannot receive the penetration of a man, penetration of the husband, probably because the vaginal wall is tiny, or she's suffering from vaginismus, or a sickness that prevents the penetration, the reception of penetration from the man. Another reason could be that the vagina cannot receive the ejaculation of the man. Okay, or even the woman does not even have vagina. There are people who are born that way. I mean, because of medical reason or whatever, they don't have it. So that woman is said to be impotent, canonically speaking. Now, when this problem happens before marriage and when it cannot be, resolved medically, we say that these parties cannot validly contract marriage. I will discuss more on this when we start talking about impediment. Anyone who enters into marriage with the purpose of not procreating contracts marriage invalidly. I heard the story of a popular actress, American actress anyway, not Nigerian actress. Uh, this lady, of course, she's beautiful. She married, but before she entered into marriage, she had already agreed that she was not going to have a child. And that was the agreement. And up till now, I don't know if anything has changed. She doesn't have a child. So she doesn't want to have a child. So before entering into that marriage, she has excluded the possibility of having a child. And that marriage in canon law, canonically speaking, is not a valid marriage because from onset, someone has excluded one of the essential properties of marriage, which is procreation and education of children. Okay. Of course, I've also heard stories, even in Nigeria, in Africa, a lady can say because of her career, she doesn't want to have a child. She prefers to enter into the marriage without having a child. Maybe she doesn't want her figure eight to change or whatever. She doesn't want to have a child. Such a lady who ab initio plan not to have a child, exclude possibility of having a child, contrast invalid marriage. But this is different from when there is a delay in having a child. You say, okay, I'm going to have a child, but because of my career, after 1 or 2 years or 2 years, I will start having a child. It is different. Now we are talking about excluding the possibility of having a child. Such a person contracts invalid marriage. So, dear friends, when you teach married couples to let them church while excluding the possibility of having a child. Uh, that marriage is not going to be a valid marriage. Now, let us go to the second part of our discussion this evening, which for me is very, very important. And I would like you to pay attention as we talk about consent. Consent in canon law. Consent is a deliberate free choice by which man and woman freely give and accept each other for the purpose of establishing a marriage. We find this in Canon 1057. That will be in the next slide. This is an indispensable element that makes marriage. Without it, there is no marriage. It consists in the words, I take you to be my wife. I take you to be my husband, according to Catechism of the Catholic Church 1627. So consent must be free from coercion or grave fear. Here we have the picture of couples exchanging their consent. Uh, at this point, what is going on is exchange of consents. This is actually the heart, the soul of marriage. If there is a problem here, something goes wrong in this aspect of the change of consent, there is simulation, the lady was forced and all of that, the marriage has not taken place at all. So this is very, very important. What is going on here is not only a promise made before God, but it is also a juridical act. It is also a juridical act, which for the church is very, very important. Now, let us go to the canon law proper on consent. What canon law says on consent. Canon 1057, paragraph 1, stipulates that the consent of the parties legitimately manifested between persons qualified by law makes marriage. No human power is able to supply this consent. Take note of that. No human power is able to supply this consent. Matrimonial consent is an act of the will by which a man and a woman mutually give and accept each other through an irrevocable covenant in order to establish marriage. From the above canon, we deduce two important elements. One is that the consent of the parties makes marriage. Matrimonium facit. Matrimonium facit. Patrium consensus. Matrimonium facit. Patrium consensus, which means that the consent of the parties makes marriage. Now, the second point is that the consent can be defected, and when this happens, marriage becomes invalid. Take note of these 2 points as we progress. Marriage is both a covenant and a contract. Marriage is both a covenant and a contract. Canon 1055, paragraph 2, and Canon 1097, paragraph 2, both describe marriage as a contract. These are the 2 places that we have the term contract used in marriage. Canon 1055, paragraph 2 stipulates, for this reason, a valid matrimonial contract cannot exist between the baptized without it being by that fact a sacrament. Canon 1097, paragraph 2 stipulates Error concerning equality of the person does not render a marriage invalid, even if it is the cause for the contract, unless this quality is directly and principally intended. So these are the two canons where we have the term, where the law uses contract for marriage. Uh, but generally speaking, we the fathers of the Second Vatican Council use more of covenants in describing marriage, and the codes uses the two terms. In Canon 1055, paragraph 1, the term covenant is used to describe marriage. In paragraph 2, the term contract is also used. There is a reason for that, for letting us know that marriage is also a contract. It is in the aspect of contract that we understand consent in marriage. Marriage is considered a contract only as marriage in the becoming. That is matrimonial in fieri, marriage in the becoming. Marriage that is at the process of becoming. Example, at the moment of exchange of consent, at that point, marriage is becoming. That is called matrimonial in fieri. At that moment, marriage is a contract. The two parties are contracting marriage. But marriage in its completed reality, that is marriage as social, biological, sacramental, religious reality, goes beyond the juridical aspects and cannot be considered as a contract. So when marriage is being completed in the period of living the marriage, marriage is not described as a contract now, but rather as an institution, okay? Rightly speaking, as a covenant. So marriage in its permanent reality, by its nature, is considered not a contract, but as an institution. So note this distinction, that marriage in its becoming is a contract. It is becoming. That is at the moment of, exchange of consent. Now, marriage in its permanent reality is an institution. Okay, so whenever the term contract is used in marriage, the emphasis is matrimonial in fieri, in its becoming. Marriage in itself is a covenant. In its natural and juridical aspects, it is a contract. This helps us to understand the importance of consent in marriage. Consent is a formal component or constituent of a contract or covenant, not convert of covenants. So, people who are making contracts, okay, who have been in a covenant has a part, a fulfillment, something that you have to fulfill. You have to say what you are, the two parties have to say it out. Okay, for this contract, see your own part, see what you have to fulfill, see what I'm to fulfill. And that is actually what happens at the moment of exchange of consent in marriage. Now, let us look at the characteristics of matrimonial consent. I'm going to discuss characteristics of matrimonial consent. First is that consent is the formal cause of marriage. It makes marriage. Consent is the formal component of marriage. Many marriages today are declared null because of lack of consent. In other words, consent is the soul or the heart of marriage. When a valid consent is given, it cannot be withdrawn, it cannot be revoked. Husband and wife who maybe after marriage for 10 years, they begin to have crisis in their marriage. One of them says that, in fact, I'm not going to marry you again. I am withdrawing my consent. I don't want to give my heart and my whole being to you again. I am done. You can't do that. Once you are giving consent from the beginning, it cannot be withdrawn. So it is consent is the heart or the soul of marriage, the components of marriage, the constitutive element of marriage. So once you have given it, you cannot take it back. Number two, consent is an act of the will. An act of the will presupposes always an act of the intellect. No one wants or consents what he or she does not know. Thus, for there to be a valid matrimonial consent, one who gives it must be intellectually stable. One who lacks reason or is intellectually unstable at the moment of giving consent cannot validly marry in the church. In other words, a madman or a mad woman cannot marry in the church. We have that in Canon 1095. I have discussed this canon in one of our marriage webinars. In our tradition, in our African tradition, of course, in the East, we find that more. You see a man who is not really doing well, he's mentally stable. People will say, okay, the family will gather, let us go and find wife for him. The wife maybe will make him to be stable or whatever, whatever. When you go and find wife for this man who is mentally unstable, as far as the church is concerned, there is no marriage because such a man cannot validly marry the church. We are talking about where there is lack of reason, okay, not someone who is having an occasional flash of reason. Someone who is having occasional flash of reason can marry validly if at the moment of exchange of consent, he or she is reasonable. So we are talking about someone who has habitual lack of reason, who is habitually unstable intellectually. Such a person cannot validly marry because consent is an act of intellect, an act of will. Number three, consent is an act of a person. No human power is able to supply this consent. Canon 1057, paragraph 2. Parents cannot give this consent for their daughter or son. It must be given by one who controls the marriage. Of course, in many places in our African society, you see a father, marrying wife for his son. Okay, in the sense that this is the wife that the man wants the son to marry, whether the son wants it or not. He must marry that. You can't give consent for another person. It is the person who is married will give that consent for himself or herself. Parents can't do that. In African traditional marriage, I know it is allowed. It has happened in many places, but in common law, it is the person who is married will be able to declare his consent and not the parents doing it on his behalf. The fourth one, which will be the last, since consent is an act of will, it is a deliberate and free act. According to the philosophy of St. Thomas Aquinas, deliberate acts means a true consent. It is the fruit of a deliberate, of an evaluation of the pro and con. That is the advantages and disadvantages of a judgment of practical reason. So for St. Thomas, when someone is acting deliberately, it means that the person is aware of the advantages and the advantages of his or her action, and the person now freely chooses to do that. That is when we say that someone has done something deliberately. So St. Thomas differentiates human acts, actus humanus, from act of man, actus hominis. According to St. Thomas, human act is an act that is done deliberately with freedom and knowledge. So when one freely does something, he or she is aware of what he or she is doing. The person does it with freedom. Nobody is pushing him or her. There is no coercion. We say that that person has really performed human acts and not the act of man. So the act of man is any action that is done without these three elements, that is without volition. The person does not will it. Okay, the person did not do it deliberately. That's what you mean, volition. Knowledge, the person does not know what he or she is doing. Freedom, there is no freedom. And in Catholic moral theology, these are also the elements that make a sin, some of the elements that make a sin a mortal sin. For a sin to be mortal, these elements must be there. One, you have to be free. Nobody is pushing you. You have to know what you are doing and you have to do it deliberately. And that action must be a grave matter. Anyway, that is moral theology. So, in every human action, for that to be a human action or human act, there must be freedom, there must be knowledge, and there must be volition. So, any action that lacks this, we say that it is an act of man. Example, reflex actions. Okay, when somebody is blinking his or her eye, when somebody is breathing, you can't control all this, and you are not doing it freely. You have no power over them. Again, the action of a mad person. Some time ago, a madman took cutlass and started pursuing members of his family. Eventually, he killed the father and some other persons. Such a mad person, you cannot, hold him responsible. You can't jail him. As far as the canon law is concerned, that action of the madman is not a human action. It is an act of man because the mad person lacks intellect. There is no knowledge. There is no volition. So, using this distinction of St. Thomas, we understand better consent, that consent is not an act of man, rather, consent is a human act. Matrimonial consent must be expressed deliberately, freely, and with full knowledge. With full knowledge of what one is doing. One cannot give consent when he or she is sleeping, you know. It ought to be manifested without coercion or force or pressure, either from within the person or from outside. Just like what an analogy someone used, a priest was preaching and used this, that a lady is a man is in love with a lady. He has been looking for a way to propose to her. One day, you know, he was crossing roads, the lady was crossing road, and the man was coming after. And a trailer, heavy lorry was on high speed coming towards their direction. The man heard the lady say, "Will you marry me? Will you marry me? Will you marry me?" The lady said, "Yes, yes, yes." And he put the ring, and immediately they crossed. Nothing happened to them. Anyway, I don't know whether this is true or not, but let's just use this analogy, for example. The lady agrees to marry this man not because she wills, it was because of the danger, the circumstance. So there is no consent in this kind of scenario. Okay. There was a coercion coming from outside, which she had no option but to accept. We'll talk more on this when we talk about impediments on marriage. Today, many people marry out of pressure from parents or from circumstances like shame resulting from unwanted pregnancy. Of course, I believe that you all know this. A lady might be pregnant, so because of the shame, she accepts to marry the person who impregnated her in order not to bring shame to the family. Maybe the mother is the president of CWO, the father is a grand knight, and all of that. In order not to bring shame, the parents may force the lady. So you have to marry, you have to marry him. Do you want to bring shame to our family? The lady, out of pressure, will now go and marry the man. Definitely, this consent is not a valid consent. If it is evaluated in marriage tribunal, that marriage can be declared null because the lady didn't freely, okay, marry the person. There is pressure coming from outside which affected the consent. Okay, so this can affect the matrimonial consent and then lead to invalid marriage. All right, friends, with this, I come to the end uh, of the workshop of my presentation. We are not going to go into group, and I know I have taken some time to explain this. Uh, we are not going to go into group. Let me get your reaction on this, your question, your contribution, your comment in general. Let me get your comments on this. I think I took time. I took much time, right? Did I bore you? You all are
Not
quiet. Did I bore you? Are you bored?
No,
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 Father,
Father,
quite
No, Father.
explanatory.
it's self-explanatory and very interesting.
Quite
It was
interesting.
very interesting.
Oh,
Yes,
interesting. Really? Wow. Good to hear
Yes,
that,
it was
you
very
learned
interesting.
something. Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
we've
Thank
learned
God I
something.
didn't bore you.
No,
Not at all. Very
Father,
not at
I
all.
have a
interesting.
question.
All right, it's not time for question and discussion. I'm expecting a lot of questions and discussions because these are real life cases. These are the things happening. Uh, let's get your
Yes,
question.
I have a question,
Someone,
Father.
please, yeah, hold on. If you want to ask a question or make a comment, just raise your hand or you put it on the chat. I give you the opportunity to speak. Remember that this is a workshop, okay? It is not a mere presentation. So being workshop is that we have to discuss practical cases, real life issues. If you have them with regards to everything we talked about, you bring them up, we discuss and put we all learn from that practical case. Okay, let's take Mr. Kajitan Akujobi. You can speak, Mr.
yeah,
Kajitan.
yeah. I have two questions. One is on the end of marriage, where you have procreation and the education of the children as one part of it. Yeah,
And
supposing you have a
good of the spouses, the second.
no, yes, but I'm just concentrating on education,
Yeah.
procreation and education. Yeah, it's supposing the two parties agree not to give birth. You know, there's an instance where you have one losing the spouse, and maybe it's of age, and will not want to give birth to another child because of what is involved in training them, and then you only want that company of another party. You know, I know that there are cases where such marriages are done in the church. So is it wrong doing such a thing as far as the agreement of the two parties? That is one. Then the second also is their marriages also. You have a marriage out of pity. You know, you are pitying somebody for a situation, and then you just marry out of because I want to help him or I want to help her. So how do we look at that marriage? I think
All right.
that another one because I witnessed that where long time ago, about 30 years now, that somebody gets married because one is an outcast. So the father refused, the mother refused that marriage, but the two parties, went on to really have that marriage. So, is there anything wrong in that?
all right. Thank you for your question, Mr. Kajitan. Thank you. You actually brought real life case. Now let's take the first one. The first question you asked that two people agreed to marry and they agreed among themselves, between themselves, that they are not going to have a child. That was the agreement. They now entered into the marriage. So it means that from the beginning, they have excluded the one of the essential properties of marriage, which I just read from canon law, those who join us from the beginning. When I was responding to the case of Yule Dochie, the statement of Yule Dochie, I read that canon to you, the canon that says that anyone who enters into marriage while excluding anyone who with a positive act of will, positive act of will means that intentionally, deliberately, okay, nobody forced you deliberately, you know what you are doing, okay, and you excluded one of the essential properties of marriage. And one of the essential properties of marriage is what? Procreation and education of children. Okay, one of the essential, okay, essential elements, meaning that without it, not even talk of marriage. Now, these people agree to enter into marriage. They say, "Ah, honey, this marriage we enter, you are not going to have a child. I don't want to have a child. I beg, I don't get wahala. I don't want wahala. I don't want to go to labor room. I don't want a child." Or, the husband say, "Yeah, honey, you're actually correct. To be safe, I don't have." Both of them agreed, and they enter into marriage. In that marriage, they started having sexual cooperation. Definitely, they'll be using contraceptives because they don't want to have a child and all of that. As far as the church is concerned, that marriage is not validly contracted. Now, this is different from the case that before marrying, they agreed to have a child. But when they now married, they said, okay, because of our career, we are going to have a child later on. Maybe after 1 year or 2 years, we have a child. All right. So they postponed the possibility of having a child. So this is not exclusion. This is not total exclusion of the property of marriage. No. Rather, they prolonged it after. That one is different. Their marriage is a valid marriage, validly contracted. So we are talking of those people, they say, no, we don't want to have a child. They agreed before entering to marriage. That is before entering to marriage, they have excluded children already. They add that no, now, as far as the church is concerned, you have not validly married. Now, if they have one, after having one, they say, I'm done. No, of course. Nobody says that you are going to have 5, 6, or 3, or whatever. So that first one is this, that once you have excluded the possibility of having children, from the onset, from the beginning, you cannot even give a valid consent because marriage is ordered towards procreation and towards procreation and the education of children. Now, someone may ask if uh, people that have passed the age of having children, maybe 60 years, 70 years, they know that they are not going to have a child. That one is different. They are not excluding children. They know that they are past the age, but they are open to possibility, even if it doesn't happen. No. So they never excluded the possibility of having children. All right. So they didn't exclude it out of positive will. That is nature, what nature brings. It's just like those who are incapable of having child because they were sterile. Sterility is different from impotence anyway. And we're not going to go into that again. So that one is different. They never excluded it from the positive out of it. Rather, we are talking of those who intentionally say that they are not going to have a child from the beginning. They have contracted invalid marriage. That is for question number one. Now, question number two, you ask that if you can use marriage to compensate somebody, if you can use marriage to pity, if you can marry out of pity. For example, a man sees a young lady that is looking helpless. You see her, this lady, there is no father, there is no mother. Let me go and marry her so that I'll be able. Of course, there is not, it doesn't touch on the validity of the marriage. For the fact that, Miriam, meet yourself, Miriam, for the fact that one of the parties consented and the other one, for the fact that there is a consent from both parties. Remember that matrimonial parties assume consensus. That is, the consent of the parties make marriage. You can cram this canon and put in here, this Latin and put in here. All right? That is from Canon 1057. What I just quoted now from Canon 1057, paragraph 1. It says that the consent of the parties make marriage. So this person that is marrying out of pity consented, say, okay, I want to marry this person. All right. And the other person accepted. Now, where there may be a problem is that if the consent he's giving is just principally intended on the fact that I want to pity this person, but I'm not going to have a child, or I don't want child, but what I just want to help this person to be a companion to this person. By that, I'm helping him or her, and the person has excluded all the properties of marriage, then that marriage is not valid. But for the fact that there is no problem, even though he or she is showing pity to this man, but he or she has given his or her consent in marrying the person, then the marriage is valid. Miriam, you are disturbing us, please. All right, Mr. Kajitan, did you get that? Have I clarified you, Mr. Kajitan?
Yes.
All right, let's take Mr. Augustine Eludi.
Thank you, Father, and thank you, everyone. Please, Father, mine is, I don't know how to put it now because I don't know what we have ahead of us tomorrow. But it's a portion at the early stage of preparation when you mentioned the issue of two baptized Catholic. And that brings me to a point where we talk about either a baptized and an unbaptized. Sometimes
tomorrow. That will be tomorrow.
Okay,
Tomorrow.
Okay,
You're
let me
talking
look at that.
about mismarriage, disparity of court. Leave it for tomorrow. Okay, maybe after tomorrow you can ask the question if that's where you are going. You know,
Yes,
is that where
thank
you are
you.
going?
Yes,
Leave it for tomorrow.
the second
That will be for
question,
tomorrow.
yes. So the second question, please, is from your presentation now, our canon, the one that you quoted, 1983, now supersedes the earlier one. So the earlier one is no longer of effect.
Yeah, abrogated. 1917.
All right. Thank you.
Yes. So nobody quotes 1917. You know, it is abrogated. All right. It was abrogated in 1983 with the motu proprio of Pope John Paul II, Sacra Disciplina Legis. The Pope made it clearly that with this new code, that one has been abrogated, that it is no longer in force. All right, so we are using 1983 Code of Canon Law. Let's take Mr. Samsung. Samsung, what's your real name? Samsung. Introduce yourself, unmute yourself, tell us your name, then you ask your question. Samsung SMA, you are raising hand. Unmute yourself, Samsung. Okay, maybe Samsung can't hear me. Friends, any other question or comments? Are we together? Okay. Samsung, you have.
Yeah, yes. My name is Rose Gear.
Okay.
Are you hearing me?
Sure.
Hello?
Go ahead, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello?
Go ahead, Mrs. Rose
Okay.
Gear.
I have two questions. One borders on the issue where you have a couple that you mentioned that probably after a validly contracted marriage, after some time, they are no longer interested because of one problem or the other. Now, a case of polygamy setting into the marriage after some years. And then probably one of the wife particularly now says, because you have violated our vows. I am no longer interested. What is the position of the church? And then the second question, a situation where there are multiple marriages, like maybe in a polygamous home that marriage was contracted traditionally or so. And then moving ahead, the man now realizes he needs to probably make his way right and decides to choose to marry one of them.
Hold on.
To
That
marry
is
one
for
of them.
tomorrow.
What also?
Hold on. You are preempting the workshop of tomorrow. So the
Okay, I
question you
can
asked
reserve that
now,
for tomorrow.
yes. Tomorrow, let me just tell you what you'll be expecting tomorrow. Tomorrow,
Okay,
expect what is called canonical form, all right?
okay,
Mismarriage,
okay,
disparity of faults, and the Pauline privilege. That's the question you ask now. Pauline
okay,
privilege, Petrine privilege, mixed marriage, canonical form, and if time permits us, we go into disparity of courts. I hope I'll be able to synthesize this tomorrow, but that's what you'll be expecting tomorrow, all these areas, all right? So if your question is any of these points,
okay.
you can reserve it
Father,
tomorrow.
so bond, though. We want to know about bond.
About what?
Bond. Marriage
Marriage bond.
bond. Yes.
Everything we are talking about is on marriage bonds. Unless
Okay.
you are talking about the solution of marriage, that is the
Marriage.
declaration of marital nullity.
Yes.
Anyway, let's do the one we have tomorrow. You can present it as a question tomorrow, Irene. I can't discuss everything on canon law marriage in 2 days, all right? That is what
Okay.
is done in 2 semesters. That is 1 year. You can use 2 days to discuss it. But
We are special
let's
students. We are special students, Father.
Carry over, students.
it's serious. Anyone we don't do this
On
2 days,
another
next year,
shame. You will pay double school fees if you are carryover student. Double
No,
school fees. What
no,
they're
that,
collecting from them.
Padino,
Greetings, my brother. See these people say that they are carryover students. Imagine they will pay
Father,
for double school fees.
this is
You need
senior
to serve the
citizens class.
world.
This is senior
it's all right,
citizens
sir.
class.
Thank you. Father, go
I
on, my
understand.
brother.
Thank you for the innocence for your intervention. So, as Mrs. Rose here, the questions you ask, the second one will be tomorrow. Then the first one you ask, the first one is really on what again? I think it still will be on tomorrow's program. What's the first one again? Okay,
Yeah,
what
the
will
first one
happen?
I was
Uh,
asking, what if after a validly
I
contracted
remember.
marriage,
I remember. I
for years
remember now.
and okay,
I remember. Yeah, I remember. So that one that the two people are living peacefully, they have been living peacefully. Eventually, one of them, marries another person, and the other one say no. But that is a real case. That is the case going on right now. I know where you are coming from. I follow the story. And the other one now says, no, this is not what I bargained for. I'm done with this marriage. What will happen? What is the church's position on that? It is simple, and I explained it in this workshop. I remember that I said that once a valid consent is given, it cannot be revoked. All right? Meaning that a valid marriage bond cannot be dissolved by any human agency. So once a marriage is validly contracted, once a marriage is ratified and consummated, that there is no human power that can dissolve it, not even the Holy Father, not even Pope, okay? So in that case, what can happen is separation. And you know what separation is, that marriage bond remains, but there is cessation from bed, cessation from table, and cessation from roof. All right, these three aspects of cessation, meaning that you are not going to be in the same room, under the same roof, eat at the same table, have sex, sleep on the same bed again. But you are validly married. The marriage bond still remains. That is separation anyway. That's by the way. So, the scenario you painted, definitely the woman cannot say, I'm going to, that this marriage must be dissolved, or you go to courts. If you go to civil courts, it doesn't have power over canonical marriage. As far as the church is concerned, the marriage bond still remains. So in that case, what may happen is uh, ask for separation from the competent ecclesiastical authority, and that is the local ordinary. The bishop will be the one who will follow and see whether the case is what we give grants, make him grant that separation. You know that one of the grounds for separation in the church is adultery. Once there is infidelity and the other party does not condone, does not support that infidelity, that party is innocent. Within 6 months, if that innocent party does not want to continue to live in the same building, within 6 months, he or she can make reports to the competent ecclesiastical authority and ask for separation, meaning that they are not going to live together. They can live separately, but they will not remarry. So that might be what will happen in this case. But to say because of that polygamous act, therefore the marriage is over, it's dissolved. It doesn't work that way, my dear. Once consent is validly given, it cannot be revoked. That is the church's stance on such a case. All right. The second question will be discussed tomorrow when we talk about Pauline privilege. Let me call on Mrs. Helen Umejiofo. You can ask your question. Unmute yourself.
There are two questions. One is assuming the case of a man that married and then they have 4 children before the wife died. Then he wanted to marry another one because he has 4 children because of the things in austerity and what have you. He told the wife that they don't want to have children again. So that she will just marry her. And the wife agreed. In that case, is it invalid marriage? Then another one is the case of...
Hold on. Before you go to the second one, let me get this very well. That they married and they had like 2 or 3 kids, and they say they don't want to have another kid.
No, you're not getting me, Father. The man married the wife. The man married the wife, and they have 4 children. Sacramental marriage. Have 4 children before the wife died.
Okay.
Then a man wanted to marry another one. He told that one that he will not have a child, that because the one they have at hand is already enough for them to be able to train them based on his capability and the woman. Then the wife agreed. Then they married. Then if that's a case, is it invalid marriage?
I think I have answered it. What happened is that the man with act of positive will has excluded an essential property of marriage. So the marriage has entered. Before entering that marriage, he said, look, we are not going to have children. I have enough. So why entering into that marriage? All right. So when you enter into marriage and from the beginning you have excluded that, of course, you have not contracted a valid marriage. Now, note this, friends. This may sound strange to you, but that is the stand of the church from canonical point of view. Not this.
One is that a lady.
Hold on. hold
Okay.
on. So just note this, all right, that when you enter into marriage, you are open. That marriage is open to generation of life. That it is open in the sense that sexual intercourse, marriage sex is involved, but child is not coming because you are regulating birth. It is different because that marriage is open to generation of life. But if you begin to use something like contraceptives, you take pills, you do this so that child will not come, then what you are doing is contrary. It's contrary to
Yes.
the finality of marriage. All right?
Mm.
To
Yes,
procreation.
Father.
So just note this. I think I have to say it and say it again until it sinks. It is important. So such a man has excluded one of the essential properties of marriage. Okay? And it is canonically invalid. It may sound strange to some of you, but that is the point. All right, ask the second one.
Okay, the second one is almost a lady during her secondary school committed abortion and the womb is removed. So before the husband came and they married her. And after the marriage, no issue for several years. So the man went and married another, and nobody to tell the man what happened because he wasn't aware. So, but he went and married another wife, and he will not be receiving. If you wonder because he has break the marriage vow, she wasn't aware. So, in such a case, what will one do?
So that marriage should be subjected to uh, assessment, evaluation in the marriage tribunal, because definitely this lady had no womb from
I
the
don't
beginning.
understand my question, Father.
I got your question. Hold on. Your question is that she married a lady who, through abortion, removed her womb, and she
Yes,
couldn't get a child for the husband. Eventually, the husband married another person. Is that not your question?
yes, Father. And then they did not
I
wed
got it.
because he married the.
If I'm not now, see this woman, end your question, let us go.
Yes, I got it. I got it. So I'm saying that there is deceit in this case on the part of the woman. All right. So
Yes,
because of that deceit, that marriage can be declared null. There could be declaration of matrimonial nullity on the ground of deceit on the part of the woman. All right.
yes, Father. Exactly. Thank
Okay.
you, Father.
All right. Let's take Mr. Anthony Atimati.
Good evening, Father. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you so much, Father, for this elaborate discourse. Sorry, somewhere along the line that was my network was waving, so I missed some points. But I remember the point where you mentioned that the marriage is between not just the phenotype, but also which means the genetic makeup of that person. Now, I know there are some people who genetically maybe they are males, but phenotypically due to some problems, they appear, they have a female presentation and all that. So if such a person who genetically is a male, but now has a female appearance, phenotype, everything, and he marries a man, will that marriage be assumed to be proper, or is it actually invalid in that case?
So genetically, I mean, naturally, she is a woman
yes, a
and
male.
changed to become a man, right?
No, naturally it's a man. It's a man naturally, but due to genetic problems, appeared females. We have some people like that who genetically is SY, but they have female appearance because of a problem somewhere along the line in the process of development. So it appears physically as a female, but genetically SY is a male.
Yeah.
So if such a
Remember,
woman contrasts a marriage.
I got your question. I answered it from the beginning with the documents of the castry for the doctrine of faith issued in 1995. That's exactly the same thing with the question you asked. There was a case in Germany that I used it at the beginning. Okay, maybe you weren't there. Sorry, you said you had network problem. So the German bishops posed the same question you're asking me now to the dicastery for the doctrine of faith. What is their response to this? And the dicastery answered negative, that that marriage is not a valid marriage. All right, that what makes someone, the gender the person has is not the phenotype, the physical appearance. We are talking about the person is now appearing to be like a woman, appearing to be like whoever. That is appearing to be. But the person's gender does not lie only in the phenotype, what you see. So that person that has changed from being a man to a woman and now goes to marry a man, that person is marrying his fellow man. So it is considered as gay union too. Is that all right? So it is not a valid marriage because what the biology, the gender of a person, the biological makeup of the person, that which makes him a man or a woman, does not change. What changes is only the physical appearance, the phenotype. Of course, the documents responded this way. It is not a valid marriage. Okay, Mr. Anthony. We take
Thank you,
Mr.
Father.
Innocent. All right. After Mr. Innocent, we have two questions on the chat. Mr. Innocent, go ahead.
Good evening, Father. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
My question is the two adults, a man and a woman, they are cohabiting. They are baptized on the same day. They have confirmation on the same day. And obviously, they have confirmation on the same day. And they are taking the Eucharist, which means that they must have gone through the first 4 sacraments. Is the fifth one marriage automatic? And the second question is that a man...
Hold on. Before the second question, I want to get every concept clearly before responding. I didn't hear about marriage in this question. I heard only sacraments, baptism, confirmation, cohabiting. Where does the marriage come in?
Now, I take the question all over again. That two adults, a man and a woman, they have been cohabiting. On the same day, they go for baptism. They have their baptism on the same day. They have their confirmation on the same day. I mean, that is marriage automatic, that they have to continue receiving the Holy Eucharist without getting married, that without taking the consent in church? That's what I mean. Is it automatic that they continue?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Mr. Nelson, please hold on. There is no correlation there is no marriage in this kind of life. Marriage is not something that falls from heaven. Once you cohabit and do your confirmation together, marriage will now fall and both of you are married. All right? In fact, after baptism, during confirmation, they are still living together. They should be flogged now. All right? They are living contrary to their baptismal promise and the confirmation they received. So that cohabitation, they shouldn't be receiving communion. In fact, it is a scandalous lie. Canon 915 speaks about that, okay? They are living in manifest sin. And people like that should be deprived of communion. Canon 915. So there is not even a married thing in this life, that because they are cohabiting and they have done confirmation, therefore they consider themselves husband and wife. They should be flogged first. After flogging, then they will be told what to do. So it is not at all. It is not, please.
The second question, a man got married in church with a wife, and after they had crisis, they separated. They are staying in different towns, in different continents. And the woman has gotten 2 children, and the man is now waiting. What should the man do? Is the man supposed to get, can the man get remarried in church? Or can the man continue to receive communion?
Has he not explained it?
Oh, Mr. Innocent, for the fact that the wife is alive, he cannot marry. That is called impediment of previous bonds. All right. If he goes ahead to marry, that second marriage becomes invalid because there is an impediment of previous bonds. So he cannot marry. All right. So in this case, the wife has been living somewhere else. The wife maybe got married over there. It is a difficult situation for the man, which, of course, he needs pastoral guidance and help. For the fact that there is a valid marriage bond, it cannot be dissolved. Sometimes marriage can be difficult for those who live it, but by the grace of God, um, the strength given to you each time you receive the sacrament of Eucharist, God will help you to overcome the challenge. Honestly, marriage can be challenging for some people. Sometimes it becomes a cross, but in this kind of situation, you present it to God for help. Definitely, anyone who advises that he should go and remarry is giving wrong advice. Tomorrow, the wife may even come back and they continue to live their married life. It might be difficult, but he cannot go and marry again for the fact that the wife is still alive. The marriage bond still remains. Mr. Innocent.
Yes, Father, thank you.
All right, before I go to Cordelia, let me read a few questions on the chat.
Good evening, Father.
All right, go ahead. Yeah.
Hello.
Go
Good
ahead,
evening,
go
Father.
ahead.
It's okay.
Yeah.
My own is clarity. I want to clarify something. Like you said, if the person is an antecedent and perpetual impotence on the part of the man, you said erection, penetration, and ejaculation. Then for the woman, you said the vaginal wall is tiny. The vagina cannot receive the ejaculation of the man. But I did not get the third point. So that is what I'm asking for.
The third one, that the lady might not have vagina. There is a medical name for that. There are people that are born in that way that they don't have vagina. Doctors have to go and construct, plastic vagina. There are medical issues. There are medical cases like that. Doctors in the house can explain better. One of our marriage webinars, we had a robotic surgeon in the house. So he talked about something like that. So there are people born that way. They don't have a vagina. In order for them to have vagina, something will be constructed for them. And are you getting the point?
Yes, Father, I'm getting it. But is possible for one not to have a vagina and the construction will be perfect?
Is it possible? It has happened now. I just mentioned an example that a doctor in the house, one of the programs, even told me that I think he had constructed, plastic. He has done plastic surgery for someone who doesn't have vagina. My sister, there are issues. There are health issues, medical complications. There are issues that happen, Of course, you know that there are those called hermaphrodites. A man that has a penis and also
a vagina.
Are you crying for vitamin C again?
One person with a vagina and maybe penis. So how can you explain that? It happens, okay? So that's the point. That's the point.
And after the construction, will the lady be able to get pregnant after the construction?
Actually, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a doctor. But your question would
It's
have
okay,
been,
Father.
Read on
yeah,
that. Father will
hold on,
not have an idea
hold
of
on.
that. We should go and read on that.
Yeah,
We
okay,
can
but
find
hold
out
on.
information on that.
All right. The question you may ask from this is that after the construction of the vagina, can the person now consummate the marriage with that construction? So, matrimonial jurisprudence, canonists will say that it can be yes, all right, depending on the practical case, on the issue. It is a case by case, not a general, depending on the case. It can
Okay,
be yes, all
thank,
right.
thank you, Father. Thank you, Father.
Okay,
Two.
I think we have a question on the charts. We can read it, then we end. Question that says, can a man who has been left to marry another man marry again as he desires? Both were baptized. I think I've answered this, that once marriage bond remains, you cannot remarry. If you remarry, the marriage will be invalid based on the impediment of previous bond. The second question says, what happens to a lady that has hypoplastic uterus from birth? Will she marry since she knows she cannot give birth? What is this hypoplastic uterus from birth? The person doesn't have uterus. Who asked Mrs. Dikocha? Explain that medical term. I'm not a doctor.
Okay. I am a medical practitioner anyway, so I've come across some young girls that has hypoplastic uterus. That's their uterus their womb is small, and since the parents or the mother gave birth to them, they have not seen period for once. So in the process of trying to know the reason why they have not menstruated, that is primary amenorrhea, no period right from time. So we now find out that the young girl has hypoplastic womb, that is small womb. And that small womb, the person will not see period. The person cannot get pregnant. In that case now, will the person marry? Since
All
in that
right,
case,
I got
proceed.
it. I got it. Please note that there's a difference between sterility and impotence. Dr. Dikocha, your question comes under sterility. Please, friends, sterility does not invalidate marriage. It is only antecedents and perpetual impotence invalidate marriage. It means that a lady who doesn't have a womb can marry validly. She doesn't have a womb, and she says this to the husband to be. The husband to be accepted, and they marry. Their marriage is open to procreation. All right, that is through their through sexual cooperation. All right, the sexual cooperation is open to procreation. Nothing is hindering it, even though they know that a child may not come out of it, but they are having a a sexual intercourse, marital sexual intercourse that is not interrupted, that is open to procreation. Of course, with that, they consummate their marriage, and their marriage is valid. They can adopt and all of that. All right? So, sterility is when there is an incapability, all right, incapability of having procreation, incapability of the fruit, of having the fruit of the marital sex. Whereas in impotence, there can't be marital sex. The act of consummation is not possible. Remember that consummation, marriage after it is ratified, ought to be consummated. If it is not consummated within 1 year, any of the parties out of goodwill can, ask for the dissolution of the marriage, which the Holy Father can grant because consummation has not taken place. So as far as the church is concerned, ratification and consummation are important in marriage. Now, marriage is consummated when there is sexual intercourse after ratification of marriage. So one who suffers from sterility like this, hypoplastic uterus, whatever, can still consummate marriage. So the marriage is valid, all right? Sterility does not in any way invalidate marriage. One who can't have a child, some people have stayed for 30 years, 20 years, how many years without having a child. It doesn't mean that their marriage is still valid. Their marriage is valid because sterility does not affect the validity of marriage. And that is the same explanation in this hypoplastic uterus. Yeah, she doesn't have womb, but there's problem with her womb. She can marry because she'll be able to consummate marriage and her marriage will be opened to procreation, but the child is not coming out of that. This person, is not suffering from antecedents and perpetual impotence. That's the only thing that can invalidate marriage. Antecedents and perpetual impotence. Sterility cannot invalidate marriage. Just like a man who has low sperm count and all of that. You ask whether the marriage is valid. Of course, the marriage is valid. So, Dr. Dikocha, I don't know if the explanation is clear. Dr. Cecilia, is it okay?
Yes, Father. Yes, Father.
All right. I think that's the last one. Can't the man go to the tribunal? Of course, once there is a problem in your marriage, the best thing to do is you approach your parish priest who can help you to go to the marriage tribunal and present the marriage case through a libellus, where the marriage tribunal investigates your marriage to know whether it is valid or not. Of course, the person can go to tribunal. Okay, at this point, friends, Mr. Innocent, you can put your hand down. I guess your hands has been up because of the question. Or do you want to ask another question? Friends, thank you all for being part of this marriage workshop today. We shall meet again tomorrow. And